I've been very impressed by, sorry, I'm going to get a drink, by the standard of questions and discussion and everything here. I mean, much of my work's already been done. So, the heroes of open and free are these two, right? Tux and GNU, right? I've had the pleasure or the interest of having Richard Stallman stay with us, so if anybody wants to have Stallman to stay, come and talk, because it needs a little preparation. But I got this GNU from him, right, okay, and so forth. So this is about liberation. Linux uses Linux uses open and GNU uses free. They're fairly similar unless you're a religious bigot in here when they're different, right, okay. And it's about making everything available to everything. Now, one of the things I'm very concerned about is that things start off free. We hear about lots of interesting operations and then they get bought by large mega corporations. Did anybody use SSRN? Social Sciences Research Network. What happened to it this year? It got bought by Elsevier. What happened then? It goes completely out of the control of the community. You don't know what's going to happen to it. You don't know the quality, the search engines, anything. So the big problem that we have is our innovations are often sucked up the food chain and then bought by mega corporations. So this is going to be, unfortunately, a bit political. Right. I'm an old, white, grey-haired, Anglophone male, right? The worst character to be talking about anything. But what I can say is I'm working very hard to enable the younger generation across the world and across diversity. So here's one of the people I've worked with, and there's about 20 I shall refer to during this talk. So if you're an early career researcher, then I'm speaking to you. This is Rick, who worked in plant sciences just over the road and wrote half of our open source software that I'll be showing you. We talked about sustainability. I have addressed this by setting up a non-profit organization. The only thing that limits this is how long I go on living, because I don't have to earn my living within the academic system. But we do have to earn money somehow or other to pay people to do some of the tasks in the operation. It's a big problem. I've been looking at this for 25 years. There isn't a simple answer, but the discussion that we had about how do you sustain an organization is really critical. Now, what I've been doing with Content Mine is to push for the ability to use the whole scientific literature automatically as a source of knowledge. That's 2.5 million papers a year, 100 million papers altogether. That should be communal knowledge, and it isn't. And there are three problems: political, technical, and community. And we address all of those. So I've created the slogan, the right to read is the right to mine, which means that if you have the right to read a paper, you machines should have the right to be able to text mining and extract things. It seems obvious, but actually the publishing community is dead set against it, or at least many of the large ones are, because it represents a loss of control. And I've been fighting this politically for 5 years. I thought it was going to be trivial, but if you look at European copyright legislation, it's anything but. So we have to tackle it by also getting people on board and changing the technology. So these animals tell some of the story. It represents capitalist publishing. Now, I'm not against capital in general, but I am against large amorphous capital organizations which are out of control. And in the publishing industry, I think the major publishers have as many problems as social media like Facebook and Amazon and the rest of it. And unlike them, it's completely unregulated, so they can do whatever they like. There is no recourse against them, and I'll show you in a minute, the excessive profits that they make. But here I want to highlight that they are doing great damage to world science, because the global south is now essentially a poor relation in the scientific community, because the ethos is to aspire to publishing in Cell, Nature and Science, and that if you don't do this and you're in Brazil or Zimbabwe or whatever, then it's not good science unless you do that. And the prices are either that you have to pay huge amounts of money. So here's Zimbabwean citizens. It costs a lot to buy scientific equipment, but at least they make their own. You see, here's a bioreactor made out of a tea urn and a Raspberry Pi. 100 quid, and it is a bioreactor. But if they want to publish the results, they've got to pay $1,900 APCs. Now, you might get half of it off if you're lucky, but I'm on the board of 2 scientific journals. One of them says, no, we're not going to have anything off LMIX. The other says, well, if they're poor enough, we might give them half off or something like this. This is destroying, it makes some poor relations in the scientific community. And in fact, we are not treating the world as a unified scientific community. We are being dragged into this idea of Northwestern glory. So, I believe knowledge should be completely free, because then you can do some wonderful things with it. But at the moment, this isn't happening. We have a problem here of surveillance capitalism, which I'll show in a minute. But these are some of the organizations that I work with. Here's Content Mine ourselves, Open Knowledge Foundation, and the software companies as well. So surveillance capitalism is when a large corporation essentially controls everything you do in terms of what you can do and what happens to the information passing it. So we've had Chris mention already. Chris, in my view, is a hero. I've managed to get him an award from Shuttleworth, and Chris monitors p-values to see if those p-values are worthwhile. And he finds that 8% of p-values are actually misreported in the literature, and I'm sure that there's a much higher percentage of other problems in the literature. So reading the literature automatically, he read 35,000 papers, and when he'd done that, Elsevier sent his university a letter saying, and I quote his words here, a violation of the access contract, considered stealing of content, and they wanted to stop. My librarian explicitly instructed me to stop downloading. So that's the world that we are in, and how many people here know of a time when the university has been cut off for downloading papers? Right, one. Well, I talk to people all the time, you know, and I've had people in Cavendish, in chemistry, all sorts of things, who are trying to do the right thing by science, but the publishers are stopping it because they're losing control. Okay, let's look at the economics of it. It costs $10 to put an article on BioArchive, and actually you don't have to pay. It's they get it from core funding from Chan Zuckerberg or whomever. Now, how much does it cost to put an article on the journal I'm on, which is a Springer Nature journal? They charge $2,000. Here's our $10 for the actual cost of uploading. Here's $200 to check it, have it peer reviewed once, and turn it into semantic form. Here's another $400, which I can't account for, but I think is inefficiency in the publishing system, right? And then there's another $600, which I don't know about, but this is corporate branding, people in suits trying to sell the company's products. So that's another six. How many people have actually physically paid an APC out of their own pocket? Well, this is what your money went to. $600 to Springer headquarters somewhere or other, and people in suits. And then, oh, the small matter of another $600 for the shareholder profit. So that's what your money went to. There. Ah, and we get our penny back. That is unacceptable on so many things, but the main thing I'm making here is it's totally distorting it, so we cannot do what we want with the literature. There is no regulation, I've said this before, and the solution is not going to come from academia, because academia need the glory that the publishers give them. There are people who pay $20,000, $50,000 to get a paper in Nature because it's worth that investment in their career. That's just for people who come to see the slides later. Okay, scientific knowledge isn't just a fun thing for academics, it actually means lives. So this is a real case. It's not my case, it's the Liberian Ministry of Health, and they found 2 years ago, published in the New York Times, that a paper had been published in 1982 which said there would be an Ebola outbreak in Liberia. It was behind an Elsevier paywall and is still there. Even though they say they make all their Ebola papers free, they're not. So, direct consequence on human health. 11,000 people died. Now, it can be argued that if they'd known about this paper, they might have done something. And the software I'm going to demonstrate you would have actually alerted people to that. Because all you need to search for is Ebola and Liberia, or perhaps even hemorrhagic disease and West Africa. And what I'm going to show you would search for that, and it could do it every day, and I can do it on this laptop here. So it's technically not difficult. But if I try and do that, then I will get lawyers' letters telling me that it belongs to the publisher. There you are, that's them. So what I'm going to talk about is the value of indexing full text. Not just abstracts, not just references, but full text, because the full text of paper, even though we know it's imperfect because the data set isn't with it and it doesn't put the right things here and we don't have the units in the figures and all things like that, it's a great deal better than the abstracts, which are sometimes 2 sentences long. So I'm going to show you downloading and extracting full text, and this is a live demo. So here we go. We need 3 things. We need the whole literature, and we haven't got the whole literature. That's a political thing, and some of us are fighting it, and we are finding it very difficult. But this is, how many people have used Europe PubMed Central? Right. And how many have used PubMed Central but not Europe PubMed Central? Right, well, you can move to this because A, it needs support, B, it's a complete mirror, C, it's got better things, D, it works with the software I'm going to show you. Right, okay. So Europe PubMed Central, I don't have an animal for that, right? We have a universal dictionary. This is ICD-10, anyone recognize it? It's used for strengthening your arms. I actually know every disease in there because 25 years ago I converted it to XML for WHO. And that tells you every disease there is and how it's reported. Now, that's not much fun to read. I didn't enjoy turning it into XML, right? But now that it is in XML, it can be incorporated anywhere. And it's incorporated particularly by Wikimedia, and I will tell you about that in a minute. So for ICD-10, think any metadata resource that you've got which explains what something is and how to use it. That is what is getting into Wiki Data. So I mentioned Wiki Data, so here we've got Wiki Data. And this is our collaboration with Wikimedia to take everything in Wiki Data, which I'll explain in a minute, and turn it into exposed semantic form in terms of dictionaries. And then there's open software. Now, I have built on lots of other open software, but what we've done is we've created a toolkit which I call Amy for no particular reason other than I stayed in Australia. It's a kangaroo. So there's a kangaroo. Sit up. And Amy is a search tool I'm going to show you. And it can index the whole of the internet if it's politically allowed to do it. Oh, by the way, that's the Ebola virus. You can buy furry Ebola viruses. Right. And so the key thing, it's got to be frictionless, right? No gatekeepers. Everything has got to be CC BY, never publish CCNC or CCND. It destroys this at a stroke, and there is no value other than to enrich the publisher. There is no benefit to the author. It only benefits the publisher, who can then charge people for reusing it. Okay, so what we've got Europe PMC, we've got Wiki Data. The software is Get Papers. I don't have an animal for Get Papers because it isn't my software, it's Rick's, but we'll have an animal anyway. Then we've got preprints. Now, I think preprints are the thing that is going to destabilize this whole business, because preprints are owned by us and not by the publishers. So long as you don't sell your preprints to Elsevier like SSRN did, keep control of your and BioArchive is going to. How many people have visited that BioArchive? Right, BioArchive is the future. It's quite new. I talked to Richard Sever, who runs it. We've had and so on. We're building a tool to extract and index BioArchive. Crossref. Anyone use Crossref? Crossref is the metadata of everything that's been published, and it's good as well. It's run from Oxford. Not the university, from the city. Right. So we're going, this is just to talk about Wiki Data. This was us working with Wikimedia and creating a large number of dictionaries, which I'm going to show you some of in a minute. And this is not big compute. You can actually get the whole thing on a, I would guess, a terabyte disk. You have to compress it, 5 million open papers, because that's all there are. Put it compressed on a disk, a Raspberry Pi. You can carry around the whole of the world's scientific open literature and compute it. The Raspberry Pi is not the most powerful machine, but it's actually bloody good. And that's what my colleague Joe uses in MakeSpace. Okay, you're going to have a demo now, right? We're going to have two programs. One is Get Papers, which gets the papers from Europe PubMed Central, and the second is Amy, which searches them. Now, this is where I'm being slightly brave, and we're going to go off and see it working. Right. So, I'm going to make a new directory, so, you know, nothing up my sleeves. I'll call it demo. And we're going to, first of all, do the Get Papers. Can you all see that okay? So this is the Unix command line. My code is, this code is in Node, right, written by Rick Smith-Anna. So it's on NPM. What am I going to? I'm going to put in neuroimaging, because I don't know what it is, right? I'm going to search whole of Europe, right, for neuroimaging. I'm going to get it in XML. I'm going to output it to something called neuro. And I'm going to limit it to 100, because although it's fast, it's not. Right, so it goes to search it there. And you will see that's how long it takes to download 100 papers. How many people do systematic reviews? Nobody. Right. How many people have got more than 1,000 papers in their initial trawl in a systematic review? How many? Yeah. We come across people who've got between 10,000 and 50,000. That's not uncommon for a systematic review. You don't want it on some remote machine. You want it here, right? You want it on a fast disk, and you can see how quick it is to download it. And the only thing standing between you and that is, you know, the law of copyright and contract. So 100 comes down in 2 seconds. That's 50 a second. So 5,000 papers. that's 2 minutes to download. Your whole paper set there, 2 minutes, right? This isn't a fudge, that was a real thing there. So now I'm going to do a search. I'm going to run Amy. This is where I cross my fingers because it's my software. We can do a co-occurrence. We're going to do it on whatever I called it. Neuro. Let's look for countries. So which countries are involved in neuroimaging? That might be interesting. Let's look for brain parts because the brain might have something to do with it. Let's look for funders. Who funds this stuff? And so on. There are, at the moment, 50 dictionaries. I expect there to be 10,000 dictionaries, so you can ask any questions of this you like. How am I doing for time?
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, okay. Good. So we'll do that. This converts it from XML to HTML. You only have to do this once, but you can see these are all from PMC, right? You can actually see there's a bug in there. They've mashed up the markup, but it tells you it's from J Neuroscience, which makes you at least feel it's doing the right sort of thing here. And so now, nearly finished. And then, so down that, it's now going to do a word cloud. It's then going to look for the countries, look for the funders, brain parts, and so on. The error isn't a real error. So we called that demo, didn't we? So it should be somewhere in here. Demo, neuro, data tables. And what we get here, I'm going to make it is what I call a dashboard, and this dashboard is can you see that at the back? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here are our various terms we put in. Here are the papers. And you can see what the papers are about just by looking at the various terms that have been extracted. Sorry about that. Here, these are the brain parts. How many people know what a putamen is? Because I didn't. Anyone know? Right, well, I don't. Ignorance is not a crime. You go off to Wikipedia, here it is, putamen, right? Just like that. So this thing is not just finding out what's in the paper, it's interpreting it for you. So the literature becomes intelligent. We put in one term. We've now found out that these things here are actually interesting in neuroimaging. White anterior might matter, right? Dorsal, ventral, striatum. All make sense to you? What people are looking at? So I've learned something, you see, by this. The machine is teaching me, and it's teaching me very gently. Then who funds this lot? Here are the funders. They're also the organisations who do it. There's a little overlap there, but you can see this sort of thing. All make sense to you? And then what are the words? Well, you can look at this. This is about biomarkers. This is about images. This is about porcupines. Right? Why are they looking at porcupines? Well, off you go to the paper. And it's actually about it's a tool called Porcupine, right? So there you go. You didn't think it was about porcupines, did you? Right. Disorders, treatment, Alzheimer's. I've forgotten what that is. Neural, you can see from the list of words and what you've got here what people are interested in. And so you really get an immediate picture of what's in the literature. And you can do this easily, 5,000 papers a day, if you downloaded them from an open thing here, you'd index the whole of scientific literature every day in your coffee break. And that could be put up on the web so everyone could look at it. No, you get a lawyer's letter immediately. I'm a chemist. Don't even ask what the American Chemical Society does. Right, so let me come back here and finish with 2 or 3 slides here, which are about community. Here's Jean-Claude Bradley. We have a community called the Blue Obelisk. That's Econ Villighagen from the Netherlands. And we give ourselves blue obelisks as tokens of respect. That was what we did. These are some of the communities here, and these are all early career researchers who are building bottom-up tools which link together, none of them competing. We put in a proposal for a new version of Fellows, which I'll show you in just a minute. And I heard literally 10 minutes ago that Mozilla have asked us to put in a full proposal. So if anyone is interested in being part of this and getting a small fellowship, it would, pay for, to travel to a conference or something like that, then let me know. We're really looking for, we haven't got it, of course, but we're going to at least put in an application. So here are some of our fellows. Jiang worked on weevils and their food plants. Chung worked on what software people were using in the literature. Here we are at Mozilla doing a hack day. That's Brazil in the bottom right-hand corner. That's Julia Reda, who's a member of the European Parliament. She can use our software, so anybody in this room should also be able to do it, right? And she fights for the right to do this, not yet totally successfully. She's wonderful, but the opposition is massive. Lars, who's 15 years old, he was a fellow. That's a toolkit that we proposed to welcome. We didn't get funded, but they said it was ambitious, which is a good sign of a proposal. And so community is the next thing. I would be very pleased if I could go away from here with, a small number of people who said, I'd like to work on this, this is useful to us, we can do something with it. So the question I want from you is, how can I help?